Today is August 10th, 2019. It is 10:50 a.m. This is Luciana Spraker, representing the City of Savannah's Municipal Archives. I'm interviewing Sandra Saucy Bauman for the City of Savannah's Frogtown, Yamacraw, and West Broad Street History Roundup Day project. We are conducting this interview at the Georgia State Railroad Museum. Today we'll be discussing the history of the West Broad Street area and the surrounding neighborhoods. Thank you for joining us today. So we're going to start by having you tell us your full name.
Okay. My name is Sandra Saucy Bauman.
Okay. And what neighborhood are you here to share with us?
Yamacraw Village.
When were you born?
December 26, 1946.
And where were you born?
Georgia Infirmary Hospital, brought to Yamacraw.
So your parents were living in Yamacraw Village when you were born?
Yes, when I was born.
What was their address in Yamacraw? Do you remember?
617.
Okay.
I got it.
And what were your parents' names?
My mother's name was Henrietta Saucy.
And your father?
My father's name was Joseph Small.
And what did they do for a living?
My mother was a retailer. My father was a merchant seaman and longshoreman.
When you say your mom was a retailer, what do you mean by that?
She worked at J.C. Penney Company.
Okay. On Broughton Street?
Broughton Street, where she began.
How long did you live in Yamacraw?
From my childhood time, I can't remember. We left Yamacraw and moved back in 1958.
And then from 1958 till when?
To the 60s.
To the 60s.
Yeah, 60s.
Where were you living when you weren't there in the 50s?
In the 50s, we lived in three places. Carver Village, Myrtle Street, and West Victory Drive.
How come your family was moving around so much?
I really don't know.
Okay. Where did you go to school when you were growing up?
While I was growing up, my first school was George W. Duran.
Okay, and what grade did you go up to?
First grade until fourth.
And then where did you go?
Then I went to Sarah Mills Harge.
Okay. And what grade was that?
Fourth and fifth.
Fourth and fifth. And then you went to middle school?
I went to West Broad Elementary.
Okay.
We moved back to Yamacraw. West Broad Elementary in the 6th and 7th grade.
Tell me a little bit about West Broad.
All right. I was in 6th grade. I had the most phenomenal teacher that is and was. That's why I know some of the things that I know today by learning. I was promoted to the 7th grade. That's when I became president of student council. And I then became president of West Broad Street School, where the principal was George W. Dixon. Now the school is the Scarborough House.
What was that? You mentioned a specific teacher. What was the teacher?
Her name was Irma Roberts Williams.
What was it, the building like when it was a school?
The same where it is now. The only thing, we had to eat downstairs in the basement. That was the lunchroom. We thought it was fun because we had to go downstairs and Going down the steps, we didn't walk, we ran down. Sat to the table.
Where did you have a playground with the school?
It was in the yard on the side. If you go to the Scarborough House, whatever that side is, to Bryant Street, that was our playground. Then if we were good, the teachers would walk us through Yamacraw Village down to the Yamacraw Village playground.
Okay. Did the school have indoor bathrooms or outdoor bathrooms?
Indoor.
Indoor. Okay. All right. Anything else you want to say about the school?
Yes, it was just a gratefulness to me. That was my beginning learning, because when I was in 7th grade, my teacher name was Solomon Myers. He was in the military, and all the things that came up with the plastic charge cards in the military, he would talk about it. And the other students would be listening, and I would be asking questions. And that's why today I do love all veterans, because I was taught about them during that era.
All right. So you left, let me see, where do you live now?
Where do I live now? I live on Pennsylvania Avenue in Savannah, Georgia, in a senior complex. It's called the Mercer House.
And how long have you lived there?
4 months now.
Where were you living before that?
In Effingham County, Rincon. I stayed there 5 years.
Okay, so let's go back to the time that you spent in Yamacraw when you were growing up. Do you remember who some of the important leaders in Yamacraw were, or who you looked up to?
Yes. First of all was Judge Eugene Gadsden. At that time, he was a lawyer, then he became a judge. Then, over the project, that's what they called it during those days in urban renewal, Leroy Bolden.
Okay. And what was Leroy Bolton doing?
He was the management over housing. Also George Jones and a few others, names that I could call. The maintenance men, we loved them. Levy Taylor and Mr. John Osborne.
So these were all maintenance men that were working
Yes.
for the
Housing Authority, the two. They were senior members. When I said senior, they've been there, I imagine, before I was born. Because I think Yamacraw was built, it's always been a discrepancy. I think Yamacraw came 1940, in the 40s. I was born in 46.
Okay. So where did the majority of the parents who lived in Yamacraw, or the individuals who lived in Yamacraw, work?
Well, most of them were domestic workers. For instance, my grandmother, Creanah, Creannah Moultrie. She worked for the Harnstons. They were Jewish. Most of them, back in the days, they just call them housekeepers. But they moved them, scaled up, as calling them domestic workers. You had people who worked for Manger Hotel, elevator ladies. Right now, the DeSoto Hotel, it was called then, but it's now the Hilton. Mrs. Bailey, she was one of the ladies, and with so many of them that I could call, but as of now, It's just so exciting for me that I can remember those things one-on-one. Sometimes I just say to myself, I remember so well I can remember things backwards.
Talk a little bit about some of the churches.
Oh, yes. I am, another discrepancy, I'm a member of First Bryant Baptist Church. Now, 231 years old, the oldest black-owned church in Savannah, Georgia. At that church, I started out Sunday school, BTU, Baptist Training Union. In the afternoon on Sundays, we would stand up in a line from 10 to 15 of us to go to BTU. Our teacher name was Gladys Mulford, and she's still alive today.
How old is she?
Well, I'm 72. I don't know how old she is.
90s?
She's in her probably late 80s.
Okay.
And then, as I got older, I started singing in the choir. And to this day, I still remain singing in the choir in the church, the mass choir. I taught Sunday school. And my most exciting part of my life in the church serving is in my Sunday school class. I have 11 boys. 11 boys. I had girls, but not many. 3 or more. But boys were my thing. And I'm glad to have lived to see lots of them have grown up, went to college, finished college, and that's my joy. Because I had sons, but the boys wasn't because I had sons. It was just my voice tincture. I could talk to a boy and they wouldn't think the word they say mean. And to this day, some of them 27, 26, 25, they say, thank you, Miss Sandra, because I always said I mean what I say. I was not mean. It was the tone of my voice. So they helped me out a lot because they had to let them parents, their parents, basically the grandparents. So everything we did, and if I felt it wasn't in order, I said, let's take a vote. And they liked that also, because as they got older, they knew when they got 18 to go register to vote.
They had a voice.
Yes, register to vote. And things I tell them when they come back to visit, the first thing they look, where's Miss Sandra? Where's Miss Sandra? Because even when I lived out of town in Effingham County, every Sunday I was to church. Still the same, but I don't teach Sunday school anymore. But I'm in the mass choir. And I volunteer to do anything that's asked. And that's another thing they liked about me. I don't ask nothing. That means chopping it. I ask, A-S-K.
Okay. Talk about some of the businesses you remember when you were growing up that were around
In
Yamacraw.
Savannah.
In Yamacraw.
In Yamacraw. All right. The business that was in Yamacraw was owned by the Harnstons. It was a grocery store. It sat right there on Bay Street. The back part was on Bryant. So that means, you know, we went in the back area. Those are the days when we had to backdoor it. And then you get your groceries and you go pay for them and pick them up. Then they had a Hudson Barber Shop. They're still circulating in business, have barber shop schools. And we had the Friedmans, Jaime Friedman's. His store was on Bay and Farm. It was a grocery store. Then we had another store on the north end. And I can remember the lady first name, can't remember her last name. It was called May Ellis. We weren't allowed to cross Bay Street, but you could yell and tell somebody what you want, and they'll get it and bring it, and you give them the money.
Nice.
Let me see, there's another store. One of our favorites was Duke's Drugstore. That was on MLK, right across the street from the Scarborough House, which was West Broad Street School then.
What did children do for fun?
Spoke-minded, sports. Our main sports down in Yamacraw was baseball, because we had the big park, the big area where the shower thing, and some of the older boys, when we was in the shower, they'd cut it off, sprinkle pool, so they could play baseball. The next one, of course, was football. During that time, we only had 3 high schools. Then third was basketball.
Did the youth have teams with a name like?
They had teams, but I can't remember the name.
Okay. So Yamacraw Village, were there any, the areas around it, did they have specific neighborhood names?
No, Yamacraw in the north end.
The north end.
That's River Street now, you know. Well, it's still north. I mean, it took a while for a lot of people to abandon that. I mean, it was a name for them. That was a great name. Where are you going? On the north end.
Have you heard of Bull Alley?
Yes, Bull Street Alley. That was downward as toward the, no, it was on the north end.
Bull Alley on the north end.
I think it was Bull Street Alley. Then we had Farm Street, Ann Street, Zubla.
What are your, just in general, what are your favorite memories of Yamacraw?
When we was young, basically on Sunday, we would all be dressed for Sunday school and church, and people from other areas would come in their cars and just walk down Bryant Street. They would start at West Broad, now MLK, and walk all the way down, which is called the Babbo Canal. Turn around, go back and get in their cars and go. That was one of my favorites. And then on the MLK side surrounding us, we had a photo studio called Sam's. It was right there on MLK and Oglethorpe. Well, West Broad and Oglethorpe at that time. York Street was one of my favorites, definitely, because that's where my grandmother would take us to get our hair fixed. And the very, very year-round things to the end was Hull Street, which is now Turner Boulevard. That's where we looked at the guys skate down Hull Street, and the girls would skate on Zubla.
How do you think Yamacraw has changed since you lived there? Or has it?
It changed a lot, because I left Yamacraw in 1973. And most of the people who lived there were born there. They weren't there no more. They moved out. And other people came in, and their ideas and intentions were different from us originally. Because back in those days, if an adult see you and you're doing something that's not right, they got you. When you got home, you was gotten again. But the new era now, I just won't even try to even get into it. And my main stuff was the parents. The parents. I have been on television by working in public housing. I worked in Fred Wessel's for for 16 years. And regardless what I did, how I cited, I still put the parents first.
Is there anything else you want to share with us today about Yamacraw or West Broad Street?
All the elderly people, like they call us seniors now, they were highly, highly, highly respected. That's one thing about Yamacraw, whether you knew them or not. And I have a tension of saying, you know, but then I've changed my venture and saying, you know of. You might not know who the relatives is, but you know the grandmother or the grandfather, the aunt or the uncle. And a lot of people, those ladies I'm with today, they knew that respectable, because back in their days, I wasn't born, they were children, and as when I grew up, they called themselves the Golden Girls. And when I got 65, I said, am I a golden girl yet? They said, no, Sandra, you got a little more yet. But see, now I am a golden girl. They're in their 80s and I'm in my 70s. But they say I'm a golden girl now because I've always been with people like from 6 to 9 years. They were older than me. But I was nosy and I wanted to know stuff.
Sound like my daughter.
I did. I asked in a minute.
Well, I think I've covered all my questions. So, do you have anything else you want to add?
Well, you didn't ask me about my work history.
Go for it.
Well, I was proud to say that back in the days they call us colored girls, and on their bad side they use the N-word. I work at Belk Department Store. I started in 1970.
Mm-hmm. It was on Broughton Street then?
No, Oglethorpe Mall. That's when Oglethorpe Mall opened in September 1969. I started in the 70s as a gift wrapper. I worked the whole month of December. They found out my birthday was 12/26, the day after Christmas. And the women would come to the counter, me being the only black person. Hey, I say it all the time, colored girl. If they didn't like stuff, the N-word. So I said, let me call the manager. And he would come. He'd say either, she wait on you or you go somewhere else. All right, every Monday I went to work. I never had a time card. This was in January. All of them was January. I said, oh, y'all just playing with me. So I rode the bus, and the bus said, look at all those balloons and the people standing outside of Belk. When I got off the bus, they said, congratulations. Not they, Catherine Gaines. She's deceased, a head bookkeeper. She said, Saucy, which they thought that was a nickname to this day. You can walk in Belks right now and say, Saucy, real loud. If anybody worked there still now, they'll turn around. I didn't know on Christmas Eve I was dismissed. Nobody told me. Belk time to this day does not end in January. It ends in February. And I had a full-time job. Over 20-something years, I worked at Belk's Department Store. I moved to Orlando, Florida. Somehow or another, they was opening this new plaza, and they heard about Saucy. Again, they still thought my name was a nickname. And I helped them set up and line up stuff. But I started out as a gift wrapper. And right today, Belks has changed. I could go in there and the managers just shake their head and say, how could you have remembered all those things? I have bracelets like these and earrings that I bought in 1969. But I didn't start working there until 70. Then, I'm going to tell you about lies. My mother and all her friends worked the Pennies and Sears. One of the ladies said, tell them you got a dental appointment and they'll see you. When I went to the resource office, and when Mr. Lance, God bless the dead, he's deceased, pull out the drawer, right then, my smartness said, I got a job. And he put the W-2 up there, I knew I had the job. See, back then, a lot of children and people didn't pay attention to things of that nature. But even before I worked to Bells, I worked at a bridal boutique. You go into Broad Street now, that's where I worked. Trying on clothes for people who couldn't put them on. And they see how I look on me and they order.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was really interesting because I worked with three women. Pearl Geffen, her and her husband owned the drug stores in Savannah, the main ones. And Larry, and I forgot Miss Geffen's first name, their last name was Geffen. They had 2 girls. How about that? They grew up running around in the store. And as we got to be adults, Susan, I don't know what Susan's married name is, Geffen, they started working for the Board of Education.
I bet you've seen a lot of changes on Broughton Street with all the
so
stores.
so many. Where everybody had to go to the back door, I didn't. I know what to do, how to do it, what to say and what not to say. And I also taught school. I was a Chapter 1 paraprofessional.
A lot of changes.
Yes, a lot of changes, and still there's a lot of changes now. But I focus it on the parents. If you can get your children to do right from home, they'll take that same stuff to school. If you do wrong at home, they do wrong, they're going to take it to school. Ask me, I know. And it was so strange. But the juvenile judges had to tell them it wasn't because I had sons, it was just my way of doing things. And I thank God each and every day. I only have 1 son left. 2 of my sons went to college, graduated from the project, summa cum laude, magna cum laude. Worked for the federal government, each 35 years. 1 was a postman, that's the one that's still alive. And the other one, he worked for the United States Army Corps of Engineers. I would go to his office, he said, Mama, go back. Go back. And the employees would have me get a basket and do all kind of mix. See how I was acting in that? That's how I used to do it. He said, don't come to my office. He said, you deal with them. He said, cause I ain't gonna get fired for y'all acting up. And when the orange alerts be out, if you have something to me, he said, all right, Mama, you come on through. I'm gonna stretch out my hand and hand it to you. And go on, I want a hug. He said, orange alert. We can go back in the building. So, life pleasures, everybody have good, bad, and not so good. But the things I did in my life so far, I really have enjoyed it. And I love volunteering. And like I said, you know, I was a foster grandparent for 8 years. And it's called volunteer. The money is called stipend. And the government had sent the word. 3 things. You wear your vest, you use the word volunteer, and you use stipend. There were always people, I'm going to work. Oh, I got my check. So, all that knock us down. Some people wonder why the government don't match up them. It's the words you say, the things you say, and to whom you say it to. Because look at you interviewing me. This is your job. We could be out there. We're going back out there. But this is your job. They do that to see, do you transform or whatever. Because when you say those things, then that makes your younger adults say the same things.
Right.
I remember I present arms to Georgia GCAT. And when you're talking about sexual stuff, I had to use the actual words. I started out with the birds and the bees. That man came to me and said, I need to see you, Miss Bauman. He said birds and bees don't. And I had to use the actual word.
Right.
V and P.
Right.
You know what those are.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, you've got to tell the truth though.
Right. He said, don't come with that birds and bees stuff and stuff. And one thing I liked about myself, I think too, that's why I was so strict. I say strict, they say mean. Because my mother would tell me things and I didn't listen. See, I was the oldest. I thought I could just do what I wanted. But she showed me, you do it, you take care of it. And I did. I did. It wasn't easy now. It wasn't easy. And then like people talk bus riding and like cars and stuff. I got a car, because I call it my Jaguar. But those things didn't bother me. It wasn't nothing for me to ride the bus. I had to ride 2 from Yamacraw to Overthought Mall.
Do what you needed to do to.
Yes, I did. I did, and I did with my boys. And everybody said, you wear your pins. Like this here, I do this here is 30 years old. One of the guys who was born and raised in Yamacraw made these for us one year and sent them from New York. How about I found this the other day?
Yeah.
But it got a bit in the back. And this right here, this is Frank Callan. 100 years old. My boys went to that club on the east side.
Frank Callan Boys
one
and
of
Girls
them played ball and one of them did.
Well, great.
And I still participate with them.
Good. Well, Miss Sandra, I want to thank you for taking your time today. And then let's go and keep looking at the stuff next door that we've got out for the neighborhood. So let's go ahead and
all right. It's just so amazing how, and then you did ask me about people. It was a Mr. Willie A. White right there up on that corner. He had this retail shop. He was a tailor. He was a tailor. He had 2 boys and 1 girl, and we all go to the same church still. And I teach them. I said, y'all never wore regular clothes. Y'all wore designers. They did.